Good morning. Today I wanted to talk about our senses, the five senses, our physical senses. And let's see if we can find a way, or just let's talk about how these senses can be useful, as well as how they can be a detriment. And then let's talk about when they blur. You're not really, in a spiritual sense, you still have an awareness of your five senses, of course, because to maintain this physical body, you depend on that. But you no longer define your world as it appears to you in your senses. You need to discriminate. You need to eliminate. You need to listen. So let's dive right in. This was prompted by a conversation I had with my wife, Colleen, and we talked about, she said she doesn't see things. I mean, in her meditation, she doesn't necessarily see colors. But she feels them through the heart chakra. She feels them. She doesn't see them. And she's asking me if something's wrong, is she supposed to see? And that prompted me to thinking that I don't really distinguish. In a spiritual sense, I don't really distinguish the senses all that well. Particularly seeing and what does seeing mean? Do I physically see things? When I meet someone, like it or not, I say that I can see them. I can see their current state. I can see lots of the conditions that brought them to the current state. I can see lots of their obstacles that are in their way towards their eventual spiritual awakening. This inevitable result for each and every one of us. Sooner or later, it's going to happen to you, believe it or not. Belief has no part to play in this. It's just the natural state of being, a consequence of being born in a human body with a soul, with protectors, with sources, the higher self. We all have them. It's just a matter, and they're so patient. Your spiritual guides are so patient, they're just waiting until you acknowledge them and you learn to listen. Listen with what I call the third ear. There's the third eye and the third ear. I'm not sure, but it's another way of listening. So let's go back to seeing. When I said I see, I can see people's karma. What does that really mean? Those that haven't dismissed the five senses and the role that they play in ego construction, ego support, and ego sustainability. Our senses sustain our ego. First, they help develop it, and then they're vested, because our sense of individuality, the way we define ourselves, the way we look at the world, gives us some security, as false as it may be. I believe, I see, I understand, I hear. And I think about the five senses quite often. I'm wondering which one I would surrender most readily. Well, see, hearing, because these two ears are just for the hearing others go on and on about what they believe, what they think, what you should think, and what you could do better, or what they could do better, or it's just mindless drivel. You need to hear because you need to listen to the universe. But that's, I believe, with the third ear. So the sense I would surrender first, if I had to put them in, rank them in order, I would say would be hearing. And then probably tasting, because I don't really care that much about food. I'm not that invested. I certainly don't have any kind of gourmet palate. And I certainly don't want to be a gourmand. And I certainly don't care about fine dining. I like simple. I like what I can prepare for myself. And I'm hard pressed when I have a chance to go out. I'm really hard pressed. Just, where exactly, what do I crave? And you don't really crave the taste of anything in a physical sense. So maybe taste. And then smell. You see, I got this big nose, right? So smell is very, very important to me. But if I had to choose between physically seeing the world and smelling the world, that's a hard one. But I think, like most of us, we'd have to go with the eyes. Because maybe there's a second nose. Maybe we can smell spiritual fragrance, yeah. Spiritual fragrance without a sense of smell. But in the end, even, maybe your eyes lead to the most. Maybe that's what I rate as the thing I depend on most. But in many ways, your eyes are responsible for what you see as real. Responsible for your reality, nobody else's. No two of us have the same reality, the same relationship, the same construction, the same understanding, the same vision of the physical world and physical phenomenon. We all just make it up. And this whole process to making up to the world as we see it, as we experience it, is very interesting. And the very construct, the very process is what's given to us as our obstacles to spiritual embracing the oneness and to discovering who and what and why we are. Obstacles, because they all helped with, our parents gave us our first beginning of sense of self, the little s, and then it's classmates in our world, and it's our own senses, our physical senses, that are all responsible for creating this ego that we have to eventually discard. We have to know this stuff because it is a wonderful thing after all when you consider that we all spend a lifetime building this sense of self that's manifested in our ego. And we begin to think, mistakenly of course, that that's who we are. So you know that awakening, one of the 4 or 5 steps towards the accomplishment of entering into abiding, permanent awakening is the death of the ego, and you should learn it. And it's depending on who invested. I was never vested in, I was never that enamored with myself. I was never that invested in my ego. And I think that has to do with past life experiences that I'd already learned. Most of what I needed to know to awaken. I already learned it. I already experienced it. But I had some relationships. I had some karma. I had some things that were still holding me into samsara, the wheel of birth, the circle of being born and dying and coming back to try it all over again. And then it takes time. Even though I feel I had a leg up, I feel like I had progressed to pretty... the conditions for enlightenment, awakening in my last lifetime, I think were very close. I'm sure I've been led to believe that it was a Bodhidharma in my previous life, and I was born into this life as a Bodhidharma. And that's why I fell into meditation and spiritual seeking at such an early age. Before my teens, by 13 I was already well into reading everything I could get my hands on about spiritual books, including the Bible, but before preteens, in the single digits, I knew, first of all, I sensed the awareness of something outside of myself. I can even remember laying in the crib and wondering what was up there? Who was watching me? I've always been a watcher, but I always knew, I think the reason I became so adept at watching was that I always felt like I'd been watched. I had a curiosity about, if this is me, who's that? Who's that? And after a while, I could hear them. They would communicate, talk to me. I could only express it as talking to me. So, we're talking about the roles that your senses, your physical senses play. And after complete dependency on the ego and your sense of self, and created by external output, but mostly it's internal. It's through your 5 senses, your 5 physical senses. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? What does your mind tell you? At that point, you don't know there's a monkey mind. There's a mind with a little m and a big mind, a spiritual mind, and you don't know which. Do you start to divest yourself? So the role that your senses play is that we're born into this new life, tabla rasa, clean slate. We don't remember past lives. We don't remember who and what and where we came from and why we're here. We remember none of that. And we just have to rely on our senses. So the role that senses plays, your physical senses, the biggest role they play is learning about yourself with a small s, establishing, supporting the ego, sustaining the ego, because a certain amount of this is necessary to negotiate the world until you get yourself in a place where you can do it by second nature. Just as we breathe and our heart beats, so too becomes your interactions with the world. You don't need these senses anymore. So they're given to you to support the mythology of that you're individuated, that you're separate, that there's a division, that there's a duality, us and them, up and down. Yeah. And it's interesting because they've served, once they've served their role, and you begin to internalize, I can live my life without any of my senses, my physical senses. Because now I know that anything that my physical senses sends me is just Maya, just illusion. Just to support the investment that I have in time and effort into creating this separate self. And once you begin the process of learning that, it doesn't take effort. When I say pay attention, it's no longer to the external world, because it's all nonsense anyway. But remember, just because it's nonsense doesn't mean that you don't have to deal with it. You certainly do. I have to feed my food. I have to eliminate the food after my body has used it. I have to listen to the sounds of traffic when I cross the street. I have to speak. I need to taste, because I'm depending on taste. If it doesn't taste, if it's spoiled, it doesn't taste good. If you have no taste, no sense of taste, and you taste something spoiled, you won't know. It's a threat. So the senses become like protectorates. You still need them. You still need to deal with this illusory world. And that's important. People think that, oh, well, once I've seen it's all illusion, that it precludes me. I'm no longer have to interact. I no longer have to make a living. I no longer have to listen to anybody. I no longer have to do anything. Well, good luck with that. Lots of luck. You'll find out that no matter your state on the spiritual hierarchy, you still have to engage. You may find yourself engaging less and less and being more perceptive and particular and judicious and selective about who and what and when and why that you react with or to. I don't go out in the world anymore seeking anything. The world offers me nothing. But I still enjoy sunset. I still enjoy sunrise. I love music. So that even though there's nothing that I want from this world, there's a lot that I enjoy from this world. I like to look at flowers. I like to grow flowers. I like to smell flowers. I love animals. I keep 2 cats. From a dog guy, always a dog guy, to not liking cats, I've learned to prefer cats. In fact, I'd like to be the crazy cat man. You know, when we have crazy cat ladies, those crazy cat men, I'd like to be in a place where I could have 20 or 30 or cats and let them come and go, and be in a place where they could be where they chose, in a safe environment. And someday that might be true. Right now I can't see much beyond. I'm comfortable in the house that I have. I'm comfortable in the neighborhood that I live in. I'm comfortable that there's enough room that my 2 cats that I do have don't have to go outside, because right outside my house, right outside the front gate, is pretty busy, dangerous front road. And there's snakes out there too here. So there's a lot of, and other cats, and rabies, and you know, better to keep the cats inside. I'd love to be on a cliff overlooking the ocean, and being protected in a way, but also being able to walk to the edge of the cliff and experience the wind and I love fog. And you know, I have a vision of I'm very happy here, and I'm content to be here the rest of my time that I have. But I also just appreciate the idea of seeing the ocean every day, waking up and being able to walk outside, and I don't necessarily have to be down on it. In fact, I prefer to be up above it, with my house set back from the cliff, but able to walk to the cliff, able to have a path from the cliff, easily to access the ocean. But now we're talking about if I could make my conditions better. I'm very content. But if it's in my fractal, if it's in my karmic path, to be in such a place, that's where I would really enjoy being. I love the ocean. That's why my Chinese name, Hai Yang, means ocean. And I was a long time lecturer at National Taiwan Ocean University. So, and I grew up in Hawaii, and I love the ocean: swimming, surfing, body surfing, scuba diving, snorkeling, you name it, in the ocean. I just love to do it. Even walking along the shore, I love to look for rocks or seashells or driftwood. I love it. I like to be on the ocean when it's a typhoon, but not be on the ocean, but near the ocean, and experience the nature at its fiercest, you know. Torrential rain. I love to get wet. And I've always felt like, somehow hard to explain, that I never could get 100%. Even when I dove under the water, that wasn't wet enough for me, and I wish I could have words, or maybe that goes back to living in the womb, where I was immersed in liquid, and liquid nourished me, and liquid filled my lungs. Maybe that's what I miss, you know. I miss the womb, maybe, who knows. But like I said, I never can feel wet enough, even when I'm underwater. I still feel like something's dry. And it scares my lungs, and I put it in all of a sudden start trying to fill my lungs with water. I wouldn't last long, would I? So, all these things is I put into today's topic eyes of understanding. Seeing, because I express everything as seeing. And now I'm not too sure. What's the difference between seeing and feeling? Am I physically seeing something? Sometimes. Am I physically feeling things? Most of the time. So how can I combine these two? And that's when I came up with this eyes of understanding. Because it's my eyes that help me see the shortcomings of the world around me. Help me protect myself from those that would do me harm. Eyes of awareness. Maybe if I was blind, who knows, if I was blind, if I couldn't see, maybe I would have come to where I am now quicker. But there was no hurry because it happened when it was supposed to happen. So when I'm talking about eyes of understanding, I love to make eye contact. I want to see people's eyes, because eyes don't lie. I've seen eyes that are dead. And these are the people, psychopaths, sociopaths, these are murderers. These are the people that beat the lie detector test. So I can't read them, but I don't want to, because all I see is death. And I'm not interested. They've got to come and they've got to suffer the consequences. They got to live out their karma. They have to be born probably thousands and thousands of lifetimes before the time it becomes that they could hear anything or experience or feel or see anything that I have to offer at this current time. But it doesn't mean I'm not compassionate. I have unlimited compassion for all sentient beings, which includes animals, plants, rocks, water, because I see life in everything. Animate, inanimate. I haven't ever discovered an inanimate object. Only animate. Animate that life force emanates. Was created. In a sense, in the lower echelons, for sure. But everything's alive. I have some plants that died from, they're exposed, they're up on the balcony, they're exposed to the air conditioning that we needed to. The exhaust from the air conditioning killed the plants. Killed some plants. Just the continual hot air. It was already super hot outside. Just extreme heat. Killed some plants. But what I know is within those dead plants is life is still apparently dead. By all our senses would say they're finished. But they all have purpose. The dead plants can be plowed up back into the ground. And if they even don't have nourishment, if they don't have anything to offer, they aerate the soil, especially in the muddy soil that we have here so much. It allows space for other living creatures like worms and bacteria to move easier through the soil and do their job that they do to enhance plant life, to encourage life. So they have a purpose. And it's my definition of life is pretty encompassing. If it has a purpose, it's alive. And I haven't found anything that doesn't have a purpose. Sometimes this purpose is beyond my understanding at that current time. But it certainly doesn't mean that just because I can't understand it doesn't mean that it's bereft of purpose. Just as in our lives, just as our senses, just as our experiences, all. I'm doing, when I paint my masterpiece, as a song, and just that I love, and you're looking at my masterpiece. You know? This is my masterpiece. Every wrinkle, every gray hair, every lack of hair, everything that you can see is my masterpiece. It's part of my masterpiece until I leave this body. When I paint my masterpiece, it's really about so much more than this physical. But I just want to share with you that those of you say not creative, I can't paint or I can't draw. Not that creative. Although I think, I like to think that I'm pretty creative in this format. That sharing, that talking, that communicating, that being a peaceful presence that makes people feel better just by being in this world. I feel that's my creativity. But you know, I wanted to paint, I can't dance, I can't sing, I can't play an instrument. So instead I can enjoy, that's my contribution. I can enjoy artwork, I can enjoy dance, I can enjoy music, I can enjoy performers, I can enjoy the beauty that people create. And I think that ultimately our best creative art might be this masterpiece, might be this being and its impact on the world in which it finds itself. So this is what my eyes have led me to understand. Whether it's feeling, whether it's seeing, I identify with the eyes for whatever reason. So now I have eyes of understanding, which leads to compassion. I don't have to accept what everybody does. I don't have to accept what everybody thinks, what everybody believes, whatever anybody feels. What I do need to accept is that we're all equal. We're all part of the oneness. And I need to celebrate that.